the battle you've been having. I mean, you've been pilloried by a lot of the conservative organizations in this little issue you've raised with
Right.
the Education Secretary, Betsy DeVos. What's the heart of it, and what are they trying to do?
So Betsy DeVos evidently was trying to set me up on Thursday in her speech to ALEC, where she took a couple of tweets that one of our staffers did a couple of weeks ago. Tweets that I completely agree with, but she basically she put them up on on whatever whiteboards or whatever they do in ALEC sessions, and said basically tweet back at Randi Weingarten because she really doesn't like individual students. And the tweet that she was using was something that said, we need actually a public school system that works for all. Now, remember, nobody would actually say, if somebody said we needed an army that works for all, they wouldn't dare say, oh, no, we just need individual sergeants that actually are working for children.
Yeah.
But you need to have, if you care about equity for all kids, you need to make sure that you have a system that is providing that for all kids. Yes, individual kids are really, really, really important. Like the kid who introduced me at my speech on Thursday, one of my kids that I taught, who went through the Navy, now is a member of ours in Wisconsin working for students. I couldn't be prouder of Claudia. But so what DeVos is trying to do is, and so she tried to do that, not knowing that at the same time, what we were doing was doing this. Public education is a public good. It is foundational to our democracy. It is not a monopoly. It is foundational to our democracy, just like public safety. And people have known that for 240 years. That doesn't mean that we don't work to fix schools, because not every public school works for every kid. And our obligation is to meet the needs and aspirations of all parents. And that means we need to have lots of different choices within a public school system to do that. But what I also said was the things that Betsy DeVos is actually trying to sell don't work for students and have historically segregational roots. Because the people who actually started private school choice were people who were white segregationists in the South who started it after Brown versus Board of Education. So as a history teacher, I just happened to go through those roots.
Yeah.
And what has happened is that the folks who support, who have been championing this, don't like anybody revealing what the historical
ripping the mask
roots
off,
were.
right.
And they really don't like people revealing that vouchers have not worked in the main for the kids they were intended to benefit and have been used as a way to destabilize and defund public schools. So Betsy DeVos, last thing I'll say is, if you look at what she did in Michigan, where she was a funder of private school choice, of for-profit charters, what has happened in the Michigan schools since she did this work, including paying for the change of the legislature in Michigan to go from Democratic to Republican and gerrymandering it so that happened, is that the Michigan public schools, or the Michigan schools for kids, were 28th in reading in 2003. They went to 41st in reading in 2015, and the same in math. So if you're thinking about performance and if you're thinking about helping kids, then Michigan is going in the wrong direction, and it's done that because it has defunded its public schools. It has funded these non-transparent, non-accountable, for-profit charters after the public voted against vouchers. That is the wrong direction. I called that out, and at the same time said, let us do what we need to do, the strategies we need to do to make sure that all public schools work for all kids.
Her reach, unfortunately, was not limited to Michigan.
Right.
I was in Ohio recently, and I heard an earful from educators about the impact of DeVos's investments on public education. And
Ohio, Florida.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, the list goes on. And, if you care about educational equity for all kids, you would presumably try to gain an understanding before your confirmation hearing of what the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act is. And I still can't. When she was asked in her hearing about that, she said, "Oh, that should be left up to the states." I mean, it was an answer that was breathtaking in its ignorance. The Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act has been an absolutely transformational piece of legislation. And as someone who served in local government in Maryland, I was proud of what our school system was doing with the IDEA. It provided so much opportunity. And as a proud public school parent, I'll just say, as it relates to this choice issue, my kids all went through the Montgomery County, Maryland public school systems, and I'm proud of it. And when they got to the 9th grade, they had a choice of 5 or 6 different high schools in what we called the Down County Consortium, and so the right kind of tries to hijack this issue of choice. And the choice that we've had in the public school system, we've chosen to invest our resources in improving the public school system and providing those choices and opportunities. And you should see where kids from our school is the largest and one of the most diverse schools in Maryland. It is the largest school in Maryland. It is one of the most diverse schools in Maryland, and it has provided pathways to opportunity for so many people, whether they arrived in this country 6 months ago or they are 4th generation Marylanders. And that sort of choice and those sorts of investments are what we should be talking about. And we ought to have a Secretary of Education that believes in public education. And
well,
that's
I
really
think you
the
nailed
nub
it.
of the problem.
The reason behind the choice, in air quotes, right, that they were trying to provide had a motivation to it, right?
I mean,
I grew up in a town where this is a segregated town in Delaware. And there was a white school and a colored school. And I remember with Brown v. Board of Education, people were saying, oh, how do we avoid this, right? How do we get around it?
And look, we are big, our union, we're not perfect. And we've had to confront, our own issues with white privilege and with, and with ensuring that there is equity for all kids. But, after Prince Edward County basically closed its schools for years and only gave white parents a choice using private school choice, our union sent supplies to kids. Our union had teachers from Philly and New York go down to Prince Edward's and set up freedom schools. And frankly, our union expelled our segregated locals in the 50s and 60s and dropped significant membership because we said this is not our values. Right. And we have to have a value of pluralism and tolerance and integration in American society. And so what is interesting right now, and what the private school choice advocates do not want to recognize, is that if the public dollar, look, you want a private school, you want a religious school, that's your right. Yeah. But if the public dollar is being used, it can't be used to discriminate. And that's why they're going at us guns a-blazing, because we have to have, there can be lots of choices. Charter schools have a role here, not for profits, but charter schools have a role. But they have to be accountable, they have to be transparent, and they have to be democratically governed. And that is what happens in public education all throughout the country. And that has to be our North Star. How do we create equity for kids? How do we create opportunity for kids? And the only people who are responsible to do that are people who have said in a public system they will be responsible, they will be accountable, they will use the public dollar that way. Right.